Thanks, Robert. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the witnesses for appearing before the committee. I remember back in the early 1990s when John Crosby shut down the northern cod fishery. He was asked a question at the time of whether or not there would be any restriction of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians being able to fish for their table. And his answer was, if the stocks ever got that low that you couldn't fish for your supper, she'd be gone by. So we're at the point now where there have been restrictions on recreational fishery for a number of years, and as you point out, Mr. Stringer, in your opening, in Newfoundland and Labrador, the fishery is restricted to 2 specific fishing seasons, which allow for a total of 32 days fishing. Now, the minister was good enough last fall to extend the fishery because of inclement weather. And that was good because in certain cases lives have been endangered where people go out and fish when the weather's not fit. So my question is I got a question for you. Right off the bat, the 32 days that you're allowed to fish for cod for your table, the recreational fishery in Newfoundland and Labrador, how does the 32 days compare to the Maritimes and the total number of days that you can fish there in a season? And the second question is, you also mentioned, Mr. Stringer, here about licenses are required to permit any recreational fisheries activity, with the exception, of course, of Newfoundland and Labrador and the recreational cod fishery and some shellfish fisheries. People are upset in Newfoundland and Labrador in that there is you're restricted from fishing recreational cod fishing in Newfoundland and Labrador more so than in the Maritimes. Why not go back to a license system whereby Newfoundlanders and Labradorians can fish over the course of a season? You're not restricted to 2 fishing times. That would cut down on health and safety concerns going out on the water, again, when it's not fit to go out on the water. Is the department looking at that, or would the department look at that?
Thank you for the question. I think there were two fundamental questions there. One is what's the comparison between what we do in groundfish cod specifically in Newfoundland and elsewhere, and the other is what would we think about a recreational license regime. Okay, it is different in different regions and in different areas. It is largely dependent on the state of the stock and the number of people that we believe are fishing and the impact that's going to have on the fishery. So in the Maritimes region, which is what we used to call Scotia Fundy, but it's basically coastal Nova Scotia and southern New Brunswick, the season is much longer. Okay, the limits is in terms of cod, 10 per day or 5 per day in the depending on which particular area it's at. There's certain fish that you cannot retain, so it is different, and it's different again in the Gulf region. So depending on what the specific, and there's not a license required, okay, for any of the regions in Atlantic Canada or Quebec for cod. So the specific management regime is different depending on the circumstances and the number of people fishing. And our concern is conservation. And I will speak particularly to the Newfoundland cod fishery, which is enormously important to the people that do it. We do absolutely understand that, and our objective is to ensure that there is an opportunity, but also that we get sustained growth in that fishery and that fish coming back. Members will know that northern cod has been at a very low level, but we are seeing signs of recovery. We were at 2% about a decade ago. 2% of what we call the limit reference point. The limit reference point is the average of the 80s. So we are at 2% in northern cod of the average of the 80s. The last advice we got, the last formal advice, said we're at 18%. Okay, so we're not back to where we were, but we're 9 times higher than we were. Okay, so the challenge is we have a stewardship fishery for the commercial fishers, and we have a recreational fishery. The challenge in Newfoundland and Labrador is people absolutely love to do it, and if you open it for a day, they're going to catch a lot of fish, and hence we need to find some way to manage it so that 32 days is the limit, and there's other limits, and I spoke to them. In terms of a license, members will know, and certainly the member that asked the question will know, there used to be one. Okay, and we have from time to time established a recreational license in Newfoundland and Labrador. We have license regimes in some areas and not in other areas. We'll be interested to see the advice from this committee about what makes sense. It's not particularly popular with some of the recreational fishers to have a license regime in place. And so we put them in place where we think there is real value, that it's going to help us understand what is caught, who's catching it, etc. So anyways, I'll stop there, but it is an interesting question. I'm prepared to answer it again, but I know I've talked for a while.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stringer. Thank you, Mr. Cleary. Mr.